I spent 8 months overseas with my Army unit, and before I left, I made sure everything back home was squared away. Bills paid in advance. Property maintained. The HOA formally notified that I'd be gone for an extended deployment. I trusted that my house would be exactly where I left it when I got back. That's not an unreasonable thing to expect from your own home. I was wrong. While I was gone, a woman named Karen, a long-time, influential member of the HOA board, developed an unusual fixation on my property. Neighbors told me later that she drove past regularly, taking photographs, documenting things that, as far as anyone could tell, weren't actually problems. A patch of unmowed grass here. A trash can left out a day too long there. Nothing that warranted attention, except apparently to her. What started as casual criticism evolved into something more organized, a steady stream of violation notices, mailed to a house she knew was sitting empty. That detail matters. She knew I was deployed. She knew exactly why those notices weren't being answered. And rather than treating that as the obvious explanation it was, she used the silence against me. Each unanswered letter becoming, in her narrative, fresh proof that I was neglecting my property and didn't care about the neighborhood. She started telling people the house had effectively been abandoned. At an HOA meeting while I was still overseas, Karen argued that the board needed to step in to protect community standards. A few board members pushed back initially, asking reasonable questions about due process and what authority the HOA actually had here. Karen kept pressing. Eventually, resistance faded, the way it often does when one person is simply more persistent than everyone else in the room is willing to be. She arranged for a locksmith to change the locks on my house. By the time the work was done, she was telling neighbors the HOA had taken control of the property, not as reviewing or has concerns about. Taken control, as if a board vote and a locksmith visit were sufficient to override a deed. My deployment ended a few weeks later. Like most service members coming home, I wasn't thinking about anything complicated. I wanted my own bed, a quiet evening, and the simple relief of being back somewhere familiar. I pulled into my driveway, walked to my front door, and put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I figure I was just exhausted, jet-lagged, running on fumes, fumbling a key I'd used 1,000 times. I tried again. Same result. I looked closer at the lock itself and realized, with slow, sinking clarity, that it wasn't my lock anymore. It had been replaced. Then I saw the notice taped to the door. According to the document, the HOA had assumed control of the property due to prolonged noncompliance and unresponsiveness. I stood there reading it twice, 3 times, trying to process that I had been locked out of my own house while serving my country overseas. A neighbor came over before I'd even processed what I was looking at. He'd seen the whole thing happen and filled in details I didn't have. Karen's involvement, the locksmith, the timeline. The more he explained, the clearer it became that this was an oversight or a miscommunication. It was a decision made deliberately by someone who knew exactly what she was doing and decided to do it anyway. I didn't go knock on Karen's door that night. I went and started building a file instead. Over the following days, I collected every document related to the situation, the violation notices I'd never received, the HOA's own meeting records, anything I could get my hands on. I talked to neighbors. Several came forward with their own accounts of Karen's behavior over the years. Patterns of overreach, selective enforcement, decisions made without proper authority. Some had photographs. Others had old emails. Every conversation added another piece to a picture that was getting clearer by the day. The real turning point came when one neighbor mentioned he had security camera footage covering the street, and that it had caught the locksmith's visit in full. The recording showed workers replacing the locks while Karen stood there directing the process personally. That changed everything. This wasn't rumor anymore. This was documented, time-stamped evidence of someone orchestrating the unauthorized seizure of a deployed service member's home. I brought everything to an attorney who didn't need long to recognize what we were dealing with. The HOA had no legal authority to seize control of a homeowner's property the way Karen claimed they had. Not through a board discussion, not through a locksmith, not through any mechanism that existed in their own governing documents. What happened to me wasn't a gray area HOA dispute. It was, in plain terms, an unauthorized lockout of a protected service member's residence. Legal notices went out. Almost immediately, the tone inside the HOA shifted. Board members who had supported Karen's push started putting distance between themselves and the decision. Some admitted, once pressed, that they hadn't fully understood what she was proposing when they went along with it. Others claimed they'd been misled about the legal basis for the action. As the situation expanded into a formal investigation, more records got pulled. Who approved what, when, based on what authority. Karen kept insisting she had acted appropriately throughout. But the documentation, the footage, the notices, the witness accounts told a story that didn't match her version of events. Eventually, officials came out to the neighborhood to review everything directly. Residents gathered to watch it unfold. Karen tried to explain her reasoning one more time, in person, in front of people who had lived next to this for months. Every explanation ran straight into the same wall of evidence. What happened after that became neighborhood legend. Formal enforcement actions followed, with official notices landing on Karen's own property. The same mechanism she'd used against me now applied to her. Neighbors who had spent years quietly avoiding conflict with her watched the reversal happen in real time. As for me, I finally got my house back. Walking to my own front door, with my own key, after everything, the deployment, the lockout, the weeks of legal fighting, felt like closing a chapter one never expected to have to write. The neighborhood changed after that. People started showing up to HOA meetings who'd never bothered before. Questions got asked that wouldn't have been asked a year earlier. Eventually, new leadership took over board, with an explicit mandate toward transparency and accountability that hadn't existed under the old regime. Karen had operated for years on the assumption that nobody would push back hard enough to matter. She mistook a title and a board majority for actual authority, and she mistook my deployment for an opportunity rather than a reason for basic decency. She was wrong on both counts. In the end, it wasn't power that decided this. It was a neighbor's security camera, a folder full of documents, and the simple refusal to let someone get away with locking a soldier out of his own home.